Okay, good morning world. I am streaming, and hopefully, because of my newly dialed in OBS settings, we won't get too many stoppages. But one never knows. What am I going to talk about today? I'm going to talk about quality. Okay, this is very important because there is a balance to be struck between, let's call it a certain pragmatism, where we say either for one of two reasons, either because of what the standards are in the industry or because everything's going by really fast. Those are two reasons why you might chimp out on the quality of something that you're either drawing or animating. So in other words, you might be chimping on how you draw it, or you might chimp out on how you animate it. So the question is that okay? And the answer is maybe. Maybe it's okay. Now the reason I bring this up is because I'm looking at this scene that I'm working on, and there's a few things that I have noticed along the way that are, shall we say, a little concerning. Okay, when I look at it as a pencil test, it's pretty dynamic and fun to watch, and this is what you'll always find. Everything, when it's a pencil test, basically everything looks good as a pencil test. And then things seem to start falling. This purist who says every single frame, every single drawing needs to be like impeccably awesome, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, but at the same time, in the real world, the constraints of time mean that we're not necessarily going to be able to make every single frame of this anime, a Rembrandt, or whatever. So the question becomes, if you want to think pragmatically about it, is what matters? When do we demand that it be impeccable, and when do we let things slip by? So what am I talking about? Well, let's take a peek here. Once I got the ink on this thing, I'm going to go ahead and erase the pencil lines. And a few things jumped out at me that were kind of surprising. This part looked pretty good. I thought, okay, so it goes by pretty fast, so I need to really slow down a bit in order to show you what I'm talking about. First of all, everything was pretty good, I thought, through here. Okay, now, issue number one, I'm just going to kind of go through the issues as they come up that I think that could be of concern. Number one, when he freezes into this pose, should he just freeze into this pose, or should there be some secondary motion of some kind to show that he's still alive? And by the way, I haven't written these points down, so I can't guarantee I'm going to remember every point, to come back to it. So I'm just going to go through here and show you things as they come to tweak OBS to eliminate these dropouts. It did me no good. So I need a better, because I have a fast internet connection and all the rest, I need a better streaming solution. So if you guys see, I've got somebody who was watching who just said forget it because of stupid OBS bailing out on me. So when your streaming solution bails out, your viewers bail out. But anyway, okay. So this drawing is maybe questionable. And this anatomy might be questionable. That all looks pretty good. So as I was looking at this, the biggest thing I have going for me is the fact that everything's in motion, because there's a camera move. I think he can be standing still once he comes into his pose. Similar thing here. Once he gets into this position, we have the secondary motion of his arm shaking, and so for that reason, I don't think that my audience is going to be necessarily looking, picking apart, every point of his hair. But having said that, there's another thing you have to remember, which is that this whole thing happens at night and it's backlit. So a lot of the details are not going to be that visible anyway. I could bring up the original scene, what's been created so far that's been fully inked and painted and all the rest, so that you can see what I'm talking about. And we'll ignore that. Okay, but if you want to see this is actually the room that this takes place in. Okay, so it's pretty, blue and dark and all the rest. So anyway, but I'm asking myself, what matters and what doesn't matter. Now this vase is going to be either traced or rendered in a 2D style. Here we're going to see Akari over here in the foreground, obviously, and then he's got to rush over and catch the vase before it falls. So do we get too picky about his anatomy right here? Well, let's look at what happens. It cuts to that shot. It's pretty fast. So if you're going to be pragmatic, to an extent, you have to say, look, if it's going by really, really fast, we don't necessarily have to be as meticulous about every detail of the anatomy as we might otherwise be. But having said that, we don't want to make excuses for crappy work. Okay, we don't want to do lousy work and say, well, it's good enough. There is a place in the real world where you say, in fact, it is good enough, because people aren't going to notice this or that or the other. Okay, so I thought what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare to a known anime, a popular anime, or something that was popular, and say, well, let's look at what they've done. Okay, so I pulled up an episode of Korra. Now, if you hate Korra, if this isn't your favorite anime, I apologize for that. I just picked it because I happened to have an episode of it downloaded, and I thought, okay, well, let's just take a look at what they did. The first thing that I noticed, and I brought it into Blender, so I'm comparing apples to apples. The first thing I noticed is that their ink lines seem to be just a little bit thicker than mine. But basically, we're in the ballpark. So that was good news. I thought, okay, that's cool. We're, what I'm doing with my ink, my drawing settings in Blender as far as my ink goes seems to be pretty good. Okay. Well, what about motion? Let's look at a few things here. I'm going to spread this out so that we can, let's go back to the beginning, and I'm really going to spread this out so I can see, so I can just toggle through the frames. Okay, look at her hand right here. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about. Okay, is that perfect? No, it's not even close to perfect. Do you care? No, you don't care. Because number one, and in fact, look at this. If I drew this, I'd be sitting here going, oh my gosh, everybody's going to think I'm the worst artist, let alone animator, on the planet if I drew that. Okay? So we've got to be realistic here to the point to say some of this stuff doesn't matter. This is a big frame, and that little part of it it's important, but it's not important enough to say, okay, you got to go back and redraw the whole thing, right? So, and one thing you see a lot in anime would be, and of course also you could argue that Korra isn't actually an anime because it's an American production. So okay, I'm with you. That's true. But aesthetically, it's kind of in a style kind of sort of similar to what I'm going for, other than the fact that the faces are more Americanized, and we're going to be going for a little bit more Japanese style look on the faces in terms of, the reference material we use to sort of decide how things are going to be drawn. Now, to be fair, I haven't really followed that rule with the ninjas. Okay, okay, what do I want to do with my sunglasses? For the most part, the ninjas are kind of in a similar, as you can see, similar style to what you're seeing there. Okay, so let's keep going. What about the motion? Let's look at the motion. it looks to me like if we go forward one frame at a time, you can see that this is animated on 2s. And, you know, there's not a ton of attention being given to every pose, but basically it's pretty good. I mean, it does look good. I didn't look at this in advance, by the way, so I don't know what I'm going to bump into. So you can see how fast that's moving. What's interesting to me is that it's animated 1 on 3s. So her motion is actually every 3rd frame. So think about it. She's moving really fast and flipping around, but they animated it on 3s. So how did they save themselves from having that look really choppy? Well, you can see what they did. They animated the camera, or they shook the whole frame. So it's on 3s. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, you know, but they added noise to the camera. So it's like, log that in the memory banks, folks. That's a technique we may want to use, because it allows us to have a little bit more economy in our animation and still have it look like everything's in motion and, you know, yada, yada, yada. So let's see here. Let's just keep going and take a look at this. Yeah, the same thing. Most of her motion is all on 3s. So, wow, look at that. Now, they did add a little bit of motion blur to it. So that's kind of interesting. So here's another thing. Look at the foot. Okay, if I was drawing this foot, I would be worried about making this. I would be wanting a shape more like that, okay? As opposed to the way they did it, it's almost symmetrical. Okay, you've almost got 2 ovals here that are connected. Okay, so to me, if I had drawn that, I'd be going, well, Dave, your anatomy is not quite up to where it needs to be. And I'm going to delete that keyframe, by the way. I'm not wanting to do a bunch of keying over top of Korra. But, you know, same thing there. With the way the legs are positioned, to me, it's not exactly awesome. Like, if somebody drew a page in a comic book and it was drawn that way, I'd go, okay, this is a fairly crappy artist. I wouldn't be that blown away by it. Right? So she's just standing there. She's doing nothing for like 6 frames. More than that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 frames. No movement. But the camera's shaking. Okay? So you can see that, like I said, these are things I'm logging in my memory banks just to be aware that there's a time to be really picky and concerned, and there's a time to say, no, wait a second. This is going to be okay once it's all put together. Here you got a little motion blur effect going on, which is easy to do in OpenTunes, and Blender, actually, for that matter, especially if we bring things into the 3D view. Now, the particle systems, I don't even want to think about at this point. But again, very choppy motion. Okay, so now let's go back and compare it to what I've done. All right, and I want to turn the that off. Okay, so let's zoom in a bit. This is from the camera point of view, and you know, honestly, it's almost as if I'm actually animating too much compared to Korra. Like right there, he's actually probably got too many keyframes. Now, the biggest thing that I'm concerned about right now is that his anatomy right there is a little questionable. Now, I want to point out that I completely redrew all of this. This guy, but it goes to show where you can sort of lose the forest for the trees, because what actually happened, I almost did it a 3rd time, and here's why. When I drew it, I think I was in the camera view, but I was really zoomed in on the guy like this. Okay? So after I drew his keyframes, and I pulled out, I realized, oh my gosh, the guy's like a giant. He's way too big compared to this guy. But then I looked at it again and I realized that I don't think you're going to care. Because he's going to go up into the corner. He's basically in shadow. And by the time, especially if we illuminate this in such a way that we're kind of focused on this guy. And plus he's backlit, remember. Because it's nighttime. So anyway, I mean, the upshot is I think it looks okay. I think it's going to be fine. You're not thinking about there's a 15, maybe a 10 to 15% relative scale difference between this guy and this guy, between their heads. And to be fair, if you drew a circle around, or an oval around his head and an oval around his head, they're not that far apart. But it's really the hair that's making it skewed. So my point is that as I look at this, I'm thinking, should I be worried about this? Should I redraw this? And the takeaway when I compare it to, obviously a very successful show, is that, again, the answer is maybe. Sometimes you want to be concerned enough to redo it and fix it, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes you don't. Let's look at detail. One thing I can get a little anal about is level of detail, and here's where you would probably see it in this scene. Okay, so you got this top view, and then we got this kind of wide shot of this guy. So one question I would be asking myself is, hey, am I putting enough detail into these guys? Now I probably am, because when I'm drawing them, I'm actually zooming in like this, so I'm treating it as if it was a close-up when I'm drawing it. So I go in real close, and I'm like, okay. Now, when you look at it close here, it might concern you, because I need to be in edit strokes mode, by the way, because you see little flaws like this. And let's turn off proportional editing, because what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit stupid thing. I'm going to hit the S key and just scale those points together. But when you zoom in close, this is another example of kind of what I'm talking about, is you see all this kind of stuff. You go, oh my gosh, look how sloppy that is. Well, you can't do it in Blender and not have it be that way. You can't. Believe me, I've tried. Okay, I shouldn't say that, because somebody else is going to come along and say, it could be perfect, or whatever, So, but my point is that you have to ask yourself, does this matter? Let's go back and compare again to Korra, because these characters are kind of at a similar scale, right? Let's look at what they did. I mean, look at this. There's your guy. Look at his anatomy. Come on. It's horrible. And that doesn't mean they did a bad job. It just means that they know what matters. They knew that didn't matter. Because that anatomy is horrible. That is really bad. Let's go back. They really made his arms tiny there. I don't know what they were thinking. I see what their problem is. They're trying to get the foreshortening, because of the angle down. Whoever drew that is kind of on the inexperienced side and didn't quite know how to handle the perspective. That would be my take. Now I'll probably find out that who actually drew that is probably somebody with 30 years of experience, is one of the most respected animators in the history of the game. Could be. And if that's the case, then I would say, well, he or she is experienced enough to know what matters. And so you just realize, look, getting that little nab there perfect doesn't matter that much. Look how fast it goes by. So you don't care. Okay. So I'm just going to keep looking here. So bring it out to here, and it's kind of at a similar scale to what I'm doing in Blender. The thing that impresses me the most is the way almost all the action, even when it's fast, it's all on threes. They're not doing in-betweens to tighten up the motion. Instead what they're doing is they're adding camera shake and stuff like that to distract from the fact that it's fairly choppy motion. So, and that's cool. I mean, it looks good, right? It looks good. Let's look at the level of detail here. Because when you watch this, you know, on TV or online or whatever, you're going to go, okay, it looks fine. How fine does it look? It's pretty simplified. Pretty thick lines. So what's the takeaway? Why do I bring this up? Because I'm a little paranoid. You know, when I'm looking at my work, I'm going, is this going to be a problem or is it not going to be a problem? So we want to just make sure we choose our battles wisely, is what I'm kind of getting at. This guy's anatomy, this is actually a great example based on what I was just looking at in Korra. The way I did this guy's leg is very similar from a quality standpoint to the arm I was complaining about a minute ago in Korra. Does it matter? Well, maybe. Because this is going to go by, what do we got? We've got, let's just go forward. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Okay, 17 frames. So you're sitting there on that leg for quite a while. When you watch it, though, what are you looking at? You know, if you're watching this and you want to put something in the chat, tell me, when this goes by, what is your eye looking at? Right there. My eye is looking at his eye. Valerie, you see what you think. When it turns to this wide shot, what are you looking at?
Well, his face.
Exactly. That's what I said too. So, yep, you're looking at his eye. And the thing I was concerned about is, well, what about the anatomy of the leg? Because the anatomy is a little chimpy.
No.
Exactly. So her opinion's the same. Yep. Yep. So if anyone else has a different opinion, feel free to weigh in. But I just asked Valerie. She saw the same thing I did. She said, when that goes by, what I'm looking at is right here. This is what I'm looking at. That's what I'm looking at. His face. So therefore, a little bit of... So what is my point? To you guys out there, if you're into animation or you want to do this sort of thing, the question is, you know, you don't want to say, it's good enough. You don't want to be self-deceived into saying that your work is good when it's really not. But at the same time, you want to be aware of the standards and practices of your genre so that you can know what does and doesn't matter. And that's basically what my topic was today. And that's why I pulled up Korra, because I really wanted to just see, well, what are they doing? And this is Rough Draft Studios. Man, they're a top shelf company. They're doing really good work. Well, are they? Yes, they are. And the only reason you would criticize things like I just criticized here about this guy's arm is that they know what they have the experience to know what matters. And it's like this shot, you know. This is a typical anime thing, actually, is that this guy in the background, sorry, it keeps bouncing back. This guy, like, doesn't move at all. Once he gets to his pose, he's frozen. Boom, he's frozen. Do you care? No. You don't care, because what you're looking at is this guy here. So we want to be aware of those things. We got the same situation here. Really the exact same situation. He comes in, and boom, he's frozen. But we got two things working for us. Number one, we've got a camera move, and number two, we're pulling our attention over to this guy. Okay? So, all in all, I'm feeling pretty good about it. So what I'm going to do now, I'm not going to deal with the vase, but I do need to get this other guy into this shot right here. Okay, so I'm going to shift gears from quality considerations. I don't know why. Are you guys hearing any strange stuff with the audio? Because when I'm watching OBS, I'm seeing it like peak out every once in a while. Like my microphone's too hot or something. Is the microphone okay? If anybody wants to weigh in, I would greatly appreciate it. Okay, so there's another thing that I've noticed, as long as we're talking about quality, but this is, like I said, shifting gears a little bit. I've noticed that when I draw stuff that looks good at the pencil test stage, sometimes it falls apart at the ink stage, and I think the reason for it, you can see it here, is I need to be a little bit more meticulous about my level of detail in the pencil test itself. So right here, as an example, let me see if I'm on the right layer. It's actually I really wish I knew why it did that, but I don't. Okay, so if I was gonna have the proper level of detail here, in order to give a proper guide to my inks, just having this for a sketch is not good enough. So I'm seeing this come up over and over where I really need to go ahead and at the pencil test stage make sure that the level of detail that we want is in the drawings, so that when we ink, I really don't want to be guessing when I do the ink. I want to really have a clear roadmap of what I want to draw. So if I had it to do over again, I'd probably do something like this. I would go ahead and delineate his mask. Okay, now when I inked it, I actually did the eyes a little differently, if the truth be known, because he's surprised. But I mean, my point is that I'm gonna, going forward, I plan to put a little more detail into the pencil art. Now this shot, I'm kind of getting away with murder here because it goes by really, really fast. Really fast. Okay, so let's look from the camera point of view. Boom! Yeah, that's like super fast. So now what I need to do with what I just said, keeping that in mind about the pencil art, I need to go ahead and draw right here. Yep, on that frame, I need to get this guy drawn in there. Alright, I'm zooming in. And now the problem I'm going to run into, yeah, I'm probably going to have to cut and paste it, but that's okay. So what do we want to do? Let's be meticulous about this one. I'm going to go ahead and do some sticks and balls. Why is it not erasing? Ah, I had that color locked. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, there's his skull, so there's his ponytail point, there's his shoulders, deltoid, deltoid. What would his back do? It would curve around like this. There's his hiney. Okay, and now we want to go back and look at that pose. So he had his left hand forward, right arm back, and he's leaning on his left knee. Wait, yeah, left knee. Okay, yeah, so I would have drawn it backwards. If I had not looked at that, I would have drawn it backwards. Okay, so this knee, we'll say there's his knee. You can barely see it. Okay. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull back here so I can just reference this little picture in the background. Okay. And I'm probably drawing this. This is not completely accurate from one drawing to the other, but I want it to read in silhouette, so we'll go ahead and here his arm is apparently pointing more down, and here it's pointing more out, but I think that's fine. Okay, so how'd we get switched to the wrong marker there, or color? I don't know what happened. It's a bit of a mystery, isn't it? It's a mystery that we can't quite explain. Alright, you know, half the fun of animation is doing the voices, right? As I taught my parrot Zuko. Yes, my parrot Zuko is named after Zuko from Avatar, The Last Airbender. So, left. Actually, you know what? I just did it wrong. I am so dyslexic. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, that's funny. I did it backwards. I swear I am dyslexic. I've never been diagnosed. dyslexic. I've never been diagnosed. I'm going to turn, I keep seeing the audio peak, so I'm going to turn my audio level down just a little bit. Okay, that's probably better. Sorry about that, guys. Okay. So, this is like a curse, people. Now my marker seems to have stopped. What if I go like that? Okay. Okay, so I look at this shot and I see his left leg, right? And then I go here and I draw it on this side. Hey, Oscar. I'm like totally dyslexic. Now, and I'm really sure it's true because my daughter, Natalie, who, by the way, played the lead in my most successful film, Healed by Grace, 2012, she is definitely dyslexic. I mean, she's 25 years old, and she does not know her right from her left. She has to do this in order to remember right from left. So, yeah, dyslexia is a thing. All right, so anyway. So let's put the armbands in so we don't forget them. Let's delineate where his forearm wraps will occur so we don't forget them. And we're going to just get this guy blocked in. And then this pose will repeat over quite a bit of range. So, and hopefully dyslexia won't cause us to like so completely foul things up that we have to redo it. Of course, the great thing about doing it digitally is you can just flip stuff, right? I guess in the old days you could flip the paper over and trace it from the other direction if you had a dyslexic animator. But it makes one wonder, have there ever been any dyslexic really famous animators who were known to be dyslexic? That's an interesting question, isn't it? Okay, well, it's interesting to me. So, anyway. All right, so let's go back here and see what's going to go wrong. Well, I think what's going to go wrong is that this is all going to wind up having to be copied and pasted. So I'm going to select it. And I don't mind copying and pasting it just because it's only a few frames. Okay. And actually, you know what? Since I already inked this guy, let me check something here. Yeah, I should cut and paste for sure. All right, so actually what I'm going to do is go ahead and delete these strokes from here. Might as well. There's no reason for the sketches to be in there. I'm still laughing about this dyslexia thing, the way I flipped that over. Because I like conscientiously looked at it and then said, yep, it's this leg, and then drew the wrong one. See, this is why I should be a YouTube star, is because I'm handicapped. Like, I'm the animator who's handicapped. Still need those character sheets done. Yes, Oscar. I'm gonna definitely take you up on that, man. We're just not there yet. We're not quite there yet. I think what I would say is I'm gonna get through this sequence that I'm working on, and then I'll pull up a couple characters out of the cast and send you the information, and so just so you can do some turnaround. So sorry about that. I hope it hasn't caused you any inconvenience that I haven't taken you up on that yet. But okay, so now am I going to regret the fact that I didn't already put in that level of detail I was talking about? Yep, I'm going to regret it, so I'm going to fix that right now, and I'm going to actually suffer through cutting and pasting it in just because I deserve to suffer. Because I didn't do my job. So one thing I've been noticing is when I zoom in and work like this, I tend to draw things too big. I tend to draw them bigger, which is a little weird. But okay, so we got that. Let's go back here, and then what would this arm be doing? If we look at the previous frame, yeah, it's just a fist. It's just a fist. Nothing fancy. So, and why it just switched back to the wrong color again, I'm not really sure, but we all know our software is going to have some bugs, right? Okay, so now what do I do about this? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this. And I'm going to select this. I'm going to go C. And I'm just going to go V, V, V. Cool. There we go. So now I have fulfilled my stated mission, which was to put in a more appropriate level of detail. And hey, you guys, I got 6 people watching right now. Who the heck are you? Say hello. It's fine helping out when you create the page. Cool. Yeah, because I mean, remember the scene that we're doing right now, which for those that are maybe new here, consists of this sequence here. So we've got this Tibetan monastery, and I'm going to go through this quickly, just so people can kind of see what's going on. Okay, so these ninja guys are basically invading Akari's bedroom. Okay, so the next part of the sequence is this shot where the Akari will actually be in the foreground right here, and then these guys come in. He knocks the vase. He knocks the table, and then ninja number 1, who's kind of the leader, has to rescue the vase. So to recap, this entire scene is, well, it's the first scene of 2D animation I've ever done in my life. So it's been all about the learning experience of diving in and just doing it. Just do it, man, you know? And so we wanted to get through this first sequence to find out what some of the gotchas are going to be with creating an anime before we step back and get a little more organized, because the story, a lot of it's been scripted, but Valerie works like George Lucas. She does all her writing on spiral notebooks. She doesn't type it. So we literally have about 8 of these full of story points and character information and research, but we have to get organized. Before we got too serious about that organization aspect, we wanted to get this first sequence done so we can step back and say, okay, this is what's involved in creating an anime. And it's been an encouraging process in that it took about 40 hours to create this, which is 1 entire minute of anime. So that gives you a sense of, well, what's the real cost? What's the real cost of creating an anime? What's it really take? Well, I know what it takes to create 1 minute using software that I'm learning at the time with a completely unknown workflow. So from that standpoint, I'm feeling like the idea of creating a 24-minute anime is absolutely, completely realistic. So anyway, back to work here. Let's go ahead and... Okay, come on. Reconnection successful. Okay, OBS is... I think OBS is back on. Yep, OBS is back on. So sorry about that. It just blanks out every once in a while. The good news is when it blanks out, it seems to be gone for about 10 seconds, and then it comes back. And it comes back every time. I've never had it not come right back on. So, all right, so I'm going to switch to Super Smooth Ink, which I actually changed the settings today. Previously, I had 3 iterations of smoothing, but no subdivision. And I've changed that to 1 iteration with 1 level of subdivision, because the way I was doing it, if I drew like boom boom, like a sharp point like this guy's hair, it would round it too much. It would basically wreck my strokes. So, all right, so it's inky time. Here we go. Have we got the right? Okay, we don't have the right color, so let's go. Okay, I just drew an erroneous stroke, so what I'm going to do is solo that. See what I did? I soloed this layer so that I can select all and hit X and delete that stroke, just to keep things clean. Alright, so for me that's the star key. I set up star key Star key solos a layer. Control star solos a color. Isolates it, whatever you want to say. I come from a music background, so I think in terms of soloing. All right, so here we go. Nope, 2 oval. Okay, and actually, there should be. I think the ear should probably be back slightly. All right, and we're gonna see his band. I'm not totally sold on that right there. Probably should still keep that layer soloed so I'm not accidentally erasing my sketch lines. Okay. All right, I'm checking my messages here. Right. So based on that time frame, it would take about 4 months to do 24 minutes plus another 1 to 2 months for fine-tuning and packaging. Oscar, that's pretty close. The only caveat I would say is 2 things. One, wait, 2 things or 3 things? Number 1, I think it'll go faster now that I know the tools in the software and the workflow. Number 2, what was number 2? Hang on, can't do 2 things at once. What was number 2? Number 2 was important. Guess that goes with dyslexia. You can't remember what you were going to say. That's a bit of a problem, isn't it? It certainly is. I can make fun of the British because even though I'm an American, I have my heritage is partly British. So if there's anybody British out there who takes objection to that, just let me know. I do want to be at least somewhat politically correct. Okay, so anyway, to answer your question, I estimate 3 months. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking if we're smart about where the details matter, like along the lines I've been talking about today, if we have a little more rigorous plan for what is being done and how. Oh, the other thing was I've only been spending like 2 hours a day on this, between 1 and 2 hours a day. You know, once we're into the production cycle, I'm going to be spending more time on it, probably a lot more time. So yeah, the 40 hours is spread over a month, or at least probably a month, maybe 6 weeks. So that 40 hours could be compressed into 2 weeks easily. And if you had to, obviously, I hate to admit here how lazy I really am, but you could compress it into 1 week. In fact, if you're a real freak, you could compress it into just a couple days. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is go back 1 frame, and I'm going to hit DB, which deletes that keyframe, except there's a problem. There's a problem, and what the problem is it appears, okay, that I put that keyframe on the wrong frame. So now what should happen is he is a static shot, and when it transitions to this, what we'll do is we'll just duplicate this frame, Shift D, which was blank. Okay, cool. Now I can erase my outline, or my sketch. So presumably, this is arguably a flaw. I actually am going to fix this right now, and I'm glad I can. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this whole guy, because look, here's the problem. I was talking earlier about come on, there we go. I was talking earlier about when things matter, and I commented that on this shot, both myself and Valerie observed that when, despite the questionable anatomy on his leg, when he turns, what you're looking at is that. That's what's going to draw your attention. Well, we kind of have a similar situation here where it seems that ninja number one is in the center of the frame, which means he's probably going to command attention. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm just going to move him over like that. Okay? So that maybe what we'll do is we'll light this in such a way that he's more illuminated, he's more in shadow, and maybe we'll see a little bit of the sort of the texture of the floor here. Now let's put the sketch back in so we can see the perspective. Okay, actually I'm glad I did that because that tells me that this is actually still wrong. I really want to grab this and I want to rotate him around and put him more like there. Okay, so let's see if that plays with what we did. He comes in, he does a barrel roll. You know, and you could actually argue that if he really did this move right here, he would be more forward into the scene. Now I'm looking at Oscar's comment. Free pre-made actors in the same style will also... Yes and no. This would be my broad observation about that, just from what I've done so far, is that everywhere you think you're going to get leverage and be able to reuse stuff, every single instance winds up being the exception to the rule, where you have to either redraw it or the pose is wrong or whatever. So I'm not banking on leverage as much as I'm banking on good plans. So having character sheets is more important than having pre-baked actor assets. Okay, so now the problem is we have to get the table. We really need to get the table into the shot so that we can make, otherwise coloring this is going to be a nightmare. Okay, so what if we do the same thing? Yes, let's do it this way. I'm actually going to put it in this static shot. I'm going to go Control D and I'm going to put that in there. And I guess as long as we're here, let me see, we should draw the table too. Yes. So let's go. I'm just going to do Control. Whoa, sorry about that, folks. Let's go back one step. Okay. I'm just going to do Control D again. And I think for our purposes we can probably get away with running this all the way over. Actually, I don't know. I'm going to rethink that. Fine here. Alright, and then let's just grab this and extend it to there. Okay, and we also are going to need... Okay, that just gives us clear borders. We're going to have to obviously have a background painting here. Let me think about this for a minute. The reality is that this would come in. Okay, hold on. This would actually do that. Okay, I think that's what we want. And okay, that works. Okay, so then what we need to do is go here. Yep, and on this frame, okay, we got a stray point there. On this frame, we need to extend that there. And then, let's do this. Let's go Control, select linked. And, okay, okay, this is turning into a bit of a pain. Alright, zoom in. Look at that. I'm clicking all over the place and I can't hit the stupid point. That's annoying. Okay, now I can select linked. I can hit the period key so I set the center right in the middle. And whoops! Except, I didn't get that. All right, and I'm hitting Control plus, 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 plus. I'm just going to delete those points. Okay, cool. So, yep, that gives us this. And then, of course, we're going to have the vase in there just sitting there statically until the table moves. And then at that point, the vase will appear and be rendered in there. So now I need to go to the dope sheet. And as far as I can see, we need to roll this back. One. We need to roll that back to 127. And I'm going to let it go forward one frame. Okay, so there's like a moment before it reacts. I don't know if that's really realistic, but okay, pre-made action, quick animation in 3D. Well, that's where this vase is helping. You know, I just modeled it in Blender. I didn't really texture it properly or anything, but I modeled it, and then what I did was I parented it to 3 empties. So one gives it spin, the other gives it tilt, and the third lets you take the whole rig and move it around. So then I basically just took this rotating vase that kind of looks like it's gonna go, and actually by taking empty number 2 and just reducing the tilt, I could take that whole wobble and make it reduce. Where's your content? I know, Oscar, I can't argue. I've done nothing. I have done nothing to build viewership here. Nothing. I haven't looked at hashtags. I haven't done any SEO. I'm thinking about it. I'm currently boning up on YouTube best practices. I actually had a conversation. I got a conversation initiated with Rick Beato, and I want to recommend his channel. I'm gonna just put this. If you just look up Rick Beato, anything you want to learn about music, Rick Beato's the man. He's a great guy. He's done. He worked with Shinedown to help them sort of become something. He had a #1 hit song he co-wrote in the country space. I forget the name of the group actually, but the song was called Carolina, something Carolina. Look. Okay. Well, Oscar, that's really good to know. Super good to know. Because SEO is huge, and I may take you up on that. Because frankly, and I say this as a web developer. I mean, I've done a lot of web development for my clients, and but I find SEO to be as boring as watching paint dry. So what did you do in the SEO? What are your best practices? You know, I'm wondering what you did in that job. Off to Betty bye. All right. Mwah. Gotta kiss my woman. All right, so might have a little problem there, because when he freezes, well, I guess when he freezes, he's over the vase. So, all right, so let's back up and look at the whole thing. Obviously, the drawing, since I adjusted that, that's in the wrong place. So we're just going to hide the temp layer. And for the enrichment of... Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, I've been looking at the analytics. I've mentioned it before, but I think the most significant thing was that the video I did the other day where I drew All Might from My Hero Academia in Blender 2.8, that video got more views in one day than most of these videos get in a week, and it's going up fast. So it's like, you know, and that was fun to do. So if people want to see more of that kind of stuff, I'm happy to do it, because when I do stuff like that, it's just it's practice for me. You know, it's helping me get better as an artist, and of course that informs my work on this anime. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put Akari back in the foreground. And what time is it? 10:28. How long have I been streaming? About an hour. Okay. So what I need to do is go into object mode, and I'm going to hit A for select all, and I'm going to hit Alt H, which effectively unhides things. Okay, so there's Akari. All right, so should I do an OpenGL render of this? I'm really tempted to. If I go back here and look at where okay, it looks like this is being saved on the X drive, which is actually a network RAM drive. So I'm going to hit Control F10. So you can see what happens, but it renders really fast. So, well, it all goes under the title, description, and supplementary items. Yeah. And like I said, it's kind of embarrassing. I mean, I've got other things going in my life. Trying to up the views on this channel hasn't been the top priority. And that's not to look down on any of these viewers. I appreciate all of you guys. My focus has been on creating content that I would like to see and that maybe others would like to see. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And as a result of doing that, my subscribers is going up pretty fast. So that's interesting. So this guy I mentioned, Rick Beato, he has almost 500,000 subscribers, and he's done it in just a couple years by just pretty much doing what I'm doing, which is he's just talking about what he okay, Oscar's giving me, if I assume you guys can see the chat, but Oscar's giving me some information about right. I have been putting keywords on the individual videos. And it's usually anime production, Blender grease pencil, anime maybe. It just depends. If I'm using OpenTunes, it includes OpenTunes. And then whatever the topic is today, like if I'm doing inking, you know, I'll tend to put that in the, yeah. Good eye, Oscar. Okay, so that's rendered. Now I want to see, I'm going to reload this and see if it comes in. I'm hoping it will. Okay, so I'm going to specify a new location or replacement file. Let's just see if this works. Alright, and we're going to open this as a sequence. And that's cool. Yeah, okay, so now we've got it into the Vegas project. So now we can actually sit back and see the whole thing as it flies by. Now the problem we're going to have, and I'm going to turn on the sound. Is sound coming out here? Audio output capture. I'm going to turn sound up. It's not super loud, but okay. So now what I'm doing is I'm going to let Vegas cache the beginning of this scene into memory. Okay, so at this point, I think that it was definitely educational looking at some shots in Korra to kind of see where they're paying attention to details and where they're sort of letting things go. But I'm going to go ahead and close that up. Yeah, I want to quit that. And then I can go back here. And I'm going to re-hide her. And then by now, this should be pretty close to ready to go. So I just want to sit back and watch the whole thing and kind of see how it's coming together, right? So once it gets through this transition, I'll quit caching it into memory. Oh, hold on. Let's go back here and let's have hit the play button. Okay, that sound effect's pretty lame. Needs to be redone, obviously. Wow. It did me like no good at all to try to optimize OBS for it's still doing the dropouts. Yeah, well, I did that. I did that, Oscar, with the OpenTunes quick tips, and I am going to do more of that. So I just want to check this flow into the next part of the scene. So she looks back there. Okay, not bad, not bad. I think it's pretty functional. So we are pretty close to ink and paint. I mean, well, paint. Obviously, the ink's been done. Which means we're probably going to have to bring this into... Well, it's either going to be Krita or OpenTunes. I'll probably try Krita just because it would all be a little more straightforward to do it in Krita. But if Krita starts bogging down and acting stupid, then I'm going to go back to OpenTunes. According to you, which is better, Blender for a beginner? Oh boy. If you just want to do 2D animation, like frame by frame 2D animation, then Krita is much easier to get started. Basically because it can do much less, but what it does, the most important things it can do. And then when it comes to ink and paint, it's way better. I mean, Blender can't even compete, really. That's my opinion. Others may disagree. You can look at some of my other videos where I kind of went over the process in Krita, and for adding details on animation, shadows, things like that, Krita's got some really nice features for that. But yeah, if you just want a tool for working out animation, like pencil tests and stuff, so you're not so much about the finished art or the finished work, you're really about learning about movement and stuff like that, then I would say Blender Grease Pencil is great because it's got an infinite canvas and it's very tactile and responsive and all the rest. So, but I mean, all this was this whole sequence was done almost, man, I'm gonna say at least 80% in OpenTunes. So it wasn't, I mean, it was drawn in Blender initially and inked in Blender, but I wound up having to do all the ink over again for the most part. So yeah, this is mostly OpenTunes here. So that's why I say that this is probably going to get ported over to OpenTunes, but at the moment I may go to Krita. So at this point, I really need to confer with Valerie about what's got to happen next in the scene, because I've described it in previous videos where he's going to breathe a sigh of relief, and then all of a sudden he realizes, whoa, what's going on? And you know, it pulls out, and you can see Akari behind him with a blade, you know, up to his spine. Well, it turns out that's not exactly what happens, and so I need to get some clarity on what happens next in the scene before I go too much further. So I would say that if I was gonna port it into Krita, it would be pretty straightforward. I would need to go through and probably take out these red lines, I imagine. But I'd say that's a problem for another day. So I think that I should probably call it a day for today. Oscar says that Krita, Sketchbook Pro, Clip Studio, and Animate Studio Pro are for beginners. Pretty true. If you want to... Oscar's pretty right. I don't know if I completely share his opinion. I mean, Blender, if you want to do 3D CGI, Blender's one of the best tools on the... Okay, I think I'm back on. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so yeah, and everybody's checking out because the streaming keeps blanking out. So probably more important at the moment than SEO and all the rest is really figuring out the streaming solution. I need to find out what other people are using, if they're using OBS or something else. But yeah, I mean, Adobe Animate is going to be a vector-based application. Toon Boom is vector-based. Blender's the best for CGI. But if you're doing 2D, Blender's not the best. Blender's okay. So, but Harsh Dwangan, Harsh Dwangan. What he asked about was for a beginner, so I assume he's talking about 2D. So I would say, for beginners, using open source software is always good because it's cheap. Yeah, I use Ethernet too. So anyway, yeah, I would say the three apps I'm using the most for this project so far are Krita, OpenTunes, and Blender. And working together, there's pretty much nothing you can't do between the three of them. So, and they're all free. So there you go. All right, so I think with that, I'm going to go ahead and call it a day. Thanks everybody for watching, and I'm sure I'll be back. I may actually start recording, not live streaming, but just doing another video here shortly. But I need to take a little break and attend to a couple other things. So anyway, with that, again, thanks for watching, and you guys, I will see you next time.